Hi, and welcome to another edition of WCM's Outdoor Hospitality Update. I'm your host, Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine. And of course, my co host is Mike Gast, writer for RVTravel.com, former vice president of communications at Campgrounds of America. And he also writes for other publications like David Korse, your Glamping Business Americas. I know he had a story in there the last issue. So, he's a prolific writer, I guess. Right, Mike?
Oh yeah. Well, that kind of feeds the bulldog a little bit, and as all of us writers know, it, Ben, too. You can't not write. It's kind of like telling
Yeah.
somebody you can't walk. So I'm doing it anyway, so I might as well get paid for it. And Dave is nice enough to. His organization is nice enough to include me once in a while. And this last issue, they let me write something out of my own backyard about glamping in Hawaii. So that was kind of fun to research and kind of fun to do. So. I always appreciate David and his crew. It's a great publication to be involved with.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, today we are going to be talking about glamping. And, I wanted to talk a little bit about the glamping show. Our guest, of course, is David Korse, who owns the Glamping Show USA. And for anybody who hasn't been to that show, you've had two now, right, David?
Two in person, and then of course we had the world famous virtual one during 2020.
Yeah, I mean the virtual one was great, but nothing beats the in-person show. And I loved last year all the different accommodation units you guys had outside, and the weather was great there in Denver. So I'm kind of looking forward to this year. David Korse, also, you also work with Glamping Business Americas, right? That's about a year old. Right?
We launched the magazine in February of last year. So 15 months? Like six issues in on a quarterly magazine. So a year and a half of publishing.
Yeah, and that magazine's been doing great. I love getting it every few months. Every 4 months, I guess, 3-4 months, and it's just a great publication. Really highlights some of the great things going on in the glamping industry, which is just continuing to boom. And I guess I kind of wanted to start maybe a little bit with your show. I guess, how are things going on the planning end for your show?
Under the category of don't say anything that's going to jinx it. So far, so good. The conference program is done. Sally Madison, my business partner, who does the conference program, finished the program just a few days ago. It will actually launch on Tuesday, May 17th. It'll go live, and registration will officially open at that time, so people can look at the conference program. So that's exciting. On the exhibition side, again, we're just very, very happy. The floor plan today is already larger than where we finished last October at the 2021 show, and we still have 5 months to go.
That's incredible.
So the show is growing very nicely. On the conference, we're going to do the 2-day program again. We're going to repeat last year's pre-show workshop. It was called Glamping Business Basics for people who are either thinking about the industry or new to the industry. And then we're partnering with the American Glamping Association and doing another pre-show workshop on Monday morning. We're getting so many people who have questions about how do I find capital? How do I find investors? Where can I get a loan? That we're doing something called the Glamping Investment Connection. We're going to try and put a whole bunch of people from both sides in the room at one time for 3 hours. People who are looking to lend money, people who are looking to invest, equity and venture capital folks, with people who are operators or structure manufacturers, people on the business side of it who are looking for investment or for loan capital, and put them in a room and kind of do a Shark Tank kind of thing and let people see what it's like to actually make a presentation to somebody with money, so you can learn what the process is all about and perhaps how to apply to your own use when it's time. So lots of stuff happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. And I mean, you've already got, the space there. I guess, is the space getting bigger where it's located there in Denver? It's in Aurora, Colorado, which is right outside of Denver. And you guys have a really nice location. But I know on some end, if this thing keeps growing, space is going to be an issue, right?
Well, I guess that's true for any place.
Yeah.
But we're okay. We're certainly okay for this year. And if we ever outgrow this facility, we do have some positive alternatives, just not yet.
Yeah.
In fact, we have enough space that in addition to the exhibits, we're going to do something else new this year, which will either be really fun or will have been a really silly idea. But in addition to our hotel options, we have 3 or 4 different hotels we use for people who are coming out, whether they're visitors or exhibitors. We're going to offer glamping at the glamping show this year. So we partnered with Stout Tent, and we're going to offer bell tents, queen-sized accommodations, gift bags, a private dinner, all sorts of stuff for people who want to spend 3 nights glamping off to the side past where the exhibit area is. So it'll be right on site. Don't have to drive to a hotel. You can just stay there if you want to. Trying to find more things to make it confusing for everybody and more pressure for us.
So, David, do you ever see a time when the show might go regional and be spread around the country a little bit?
From a visitor standpoint, Mike, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's easier if we did something in the Southeast or the Northeast or the Midwest. The challenge is for exhibitors. It costs them as much to do, it costs twice as much to do 2 as it does to do 1. And as you know, it takes a lot of planning and freight costs and all the things that go into it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure the sector is large enough yet that we could generate a large enough audience at each of those regional events, whether it's 2 or more, to make it worthwhile, at least right now. It's something we'll certainly consider, and if the demand is there, we will. But where there are so many regional consumer events, which make great sense because the consumers are coming in from 50, 100, 150 miles. Ours is not only national, but international. We get people coming from out of the country and all over the country in North America. So for right now, we'll stay with 1 and see if we can make it just kind of the big deal.
That was my next question too, because I know when you named the show in the magazine, Glamping Business Americas, you had your mind on you had your eye on a bigger market. Are you still considering the market for Glamping Business Americas to be North America, which a lot of people don't realize includes Mexico and probably going down into South America too?
Yeah, we named the magazine. I mean, we stopped going back in my Wayback Machine. If this were 3 years ago, we would have called it the Glamping Show Americas, because we didn't realize there's going to be so much interest from both north and south of the U.S. border. When we launched the magazine last year, we had that information. And so we just took the risk of making the name a little bit different. And I suppose we could go back and think about rebranding at some point in time if it becomes confusing to folks. Right now, on the magazine, about 90% of our readers are in the United States, and about 5% are in Canada, and about 5% are south of the border, Mexico, all the way down to Patagonia, down to the tip. And we're getting a lot of it. Several of them came to the show. We had people, we had 50 attendees from Mexico that came to the show, had people from Peru and Chile and Argentina and Bolivia and Belize and the Caribbean. So we'll try to have the name reflect what we're doing. If that gets bigger, we might rebrand it at a later time, and I'll have to get a new jacket that doesn't say USA on the end of it.
I mean, it's just amazing how quickly the show has grown, and you even had a COVID, webinar, I don't know what you want to call that thing, webisode or whatever in there. I mean,
I like that.
just the fact, year 1 was really solid. Then you kind of had to take a year off and have it online. And then year 2, it was just amazing, the growth. And it just kind of reflects the growth in the industry, I guess, right? Yeah, I mean, it's just booming.
I think it does. I mean, if you look at the demographics of people who come to the event, the number of people who say, I'm already in the glamping business, increased by 5 or 10% from 2019 to 2021. And that was sort of the 2 categories, people that are sort of just glamping sites versus the people who are doing RV parks and traditional campgrounds who either have added or are in the process of adding glamping to their offerings. but the growth on the people side of people who are entering the business, they bought the land, they're in the process someplace, or those doing the due diligence about wanting to enter the space has exploded. That more than doubled. And I think the pandemic certainly contributed. And how many of us used to work in an office and are saying, I don't ever want to do that again if I can help it. And maybe took it a step further. I'm working in my backyard. I'm working someplace that's nice. Gee, what if my whole work life was out here as opposed to driving downtown kind of stuff? And I think it just inspired people to figure out something that they liked better than being in a cube farm. So yeah, it's growing like a weed.
So I've had a lot of fun discussions with my former colleagues at Campgrounds of America, and they've got the Terramore facility up in Bar Harbor, Maine, that they've had for going a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And it's really taken off, and they've been very pleased with that they've kind of kept it separate from the KOA brand, and they've got their own marketing powers and their own budgets and everything else for that to keep it separate. But it's really been very popular, and they're getting ready to launch out with several more of those across the country. Are you seeing more big developments like that, or is it more mom and pop still just putting a couple of units on something they've got?
It's both, Mike. The number of people who inquire about things. How can I do this? The number of people who have larger projects. It isn't just the 2 or 3 or 5, but things of bigger scale, and whether that means 20 or whether it means 200, has increased pretty dramatically. I just think people are seeing. If you look at some of the wonderful success stories that are out there from glamping organizations that are growing like a weed all over the country, and some brand names that are getting equity investment and are expanding everywhere. And in fact, some of the biggest challenges are, where do we go next? How do we find enough places that meet our criteria to go? We've got hotels that are looking to expand, whether it's just glamping or adding a glamping component to existing resorts or structures. But we still have a ton of entrepreneurs who are saying, I got this 10 acres in the most beautiful spot, and I've always wanted to do this. So it's equally divided, I guess. From an exhibitor point of view, obviously our exhibitors and our advertisers like the 200-unit conversations better than the 2-unit conversations, but it takes everybody.
What are you hearing from the vendors you have? Are they having the same supply chain issues everybody else is?
Yeah, supply chain issues, transportation costs, shipping, and not just whether it's the fulfillment of an order to a customer and sending stuff, furniture, a structure, whatever the big stuff is, from point A to point B is 2.5, 3 times more expensive than it was 2 years ago. Whether you're ordering new parts to manufacture, or whether you are shipping a finished product someplace else, it screws up your margins pretty badly if you're locked into a given price and suddenly all the incremental costs go up. Even just doing the show. I talked to one exhibitor who said, it cost me $2,500 to ship my stuff in 2019, and it cost me $6,500 to ship the same stuff in 2021, just because shipping is restricted, there are backups in ports. We all read the news and hear what's happening. So supply chain for manufacturing other places, transshipping, getting it here, labor shortages, whether it's manufacturing, labor shortages for operators, trying to find staff to actually work at the resort. And there are challenges at every level across the board.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we hear those challenges all across the industry. So hopefully it eases here pretty soon. I think in some areas it's kind of easing, and in other areas it's still pretty rough. So I guess I think the Glamping Business Americas magazine is pretty neat because it kind of gives different perspectives on everything that the glamping industry has, from sort of the exotic. There's kind of an exotic side of the glamping industry to the, more traditional glamping. I don't know if you can even say traditional glamping. I don't even know if we know what glamping is, I guess.
I was going to ask you to define that for me. That would make my life a lot easier.
But I mean, some of it seems a little bit more exotic, I guess. it is kind of there's just a bunch of different. There's a ton of range in glamping, right, David? You know.
Yeah. If you think about it, each of us has our own things we're looking for. You know, and for some people, it's I want something that puts me out of doors, but I really like the idea of air conditioning and heating and Wi-Fi. And other people want a very different experience, and they want to be in a covered wagon in the middle of Indian country. I talked to a business owner. He and his wife have a business where they said their biggest challenge is finding innovative structures because they want to be extraordinary. They don't want to do anything anybody else is doing. And I said, well, tell me, what does that mean? He said, well, think of Elon Musk and Walt Disney getting together and designing a place. That's what we want to be. And if he can pull that off, whatever that means, and when he markets himself, he'll be able to market that vision, that difference, because it still gets back to the experience. And that's aside from the fact that it's more comfortable than having a sleeping bag and pitching a tent and finding a latrine and all those kinds of things. Glamping is as much about the experience. It's what the environment you're in. Where being with Mike and going to Volcano National Park this afternoon, it's about that as much as anything. So it is not one size fits all. There may be parts of it that are reservation systems or things, the infrastructure kind of stuff that everybody needs. You got to figure out off grid. You got to figure out all the different options. How are you going to do all these things? But the actual accommodation experience, combination of what you get, where you stay, what it's like, that's the part where people can really express their creativity and then market to that particular sector of people who very much want that kind of experience.
So the glamping customer, we talked about this before, but the glamping customer is really something different than the traditional camping guest that was coming in with an RV or has tenting experience in their past. The market for glamping really is somebody coming down from a boutique hotel experience more. Is that the target?
Well, the answer is yes, and maybe not for some. We're back to different strokes for different folks again. Mm-hmm. But if you think about the way I think about it, which doesn't buy you anything, is from a demographic point of view, from a business point of view, we know the people that stay in a hotel, and they have to stay in a hotel for business, they stay for pleasure, whatever they're going to do, and hoteliers customize that experience. A person going to a traditional campground wants to rough it, and even no matter how much cool stuff they have, they're going to pitch a tent and they're going to get in a sleeping bag and they're going to figure all that, bring their own food or do whatever they have to do. That's the experience they're looking for. Someone who's got an RV, they're looking for that experience, and part of that experience is taking their environment with them and having that consistency and whatever level of stuff they have, whether it's basic or extraordinary, and taking that with them wherever they go to have those RV experiences. As a business, I think the glamping folks are trying to take those two things and being outdoors and having the ability to have all these different experiences and taking away the requirement that you have any of your own stuff. You don't have to have an RV.
Yeah.
You can just show up. You don't have to rent an RV. You don't have to have a sleeping bag or a tent or know how to do that. You can just show up, and that opens such an incredibly broad demographic to the business person of who they can reach out to be a customer. It's not just people with a tent or just people with an RV, using those as silly, oversimplified examples. It's anybody who wants to have this experience, wants to be outdoors, wants to be in the vineyards, wants to be in Martha's Vineyard, wants to be near the swamps, wants to be in Indian country, whatever that is. They can do that without having to have their own stuff. They can just get there, it's all taken care of, and go on home when they're finished. And I think that's the biggest part of glamping as a business opportunity, and why so many, KOA is a great example when they launched Chamoy. You'll remember probably, Mike, in 2019 when they made the presentation at our show about the case studies of the trial glamping things at 4 or 5 different sites and what the great return on investment was. But it wasn't just the ROI, it was expanding the profile of the people they could reach out to. So It's just glamping is its own sort of thing. It's not one size fits all, and that's the beauty of it. You can customize your marketing and the experience for the folks you want to reach.
Does I know when I know your show, the financial part is a pretty big deal, and I know when I have conversations with people at your show, the finances always comes up. I guess, what's just your sense on investors? Is there capital out there that wants to be involved in the glamping sector? Is it, they're just waiting for
It's a great question. I didn't ask you to ask that question, but I probably should have asked you to ask the question, because that leads right into this new workshop that we're launching. Yeah, it's a question that we get all the time, and we're not an association, we're not a resource for that kind of stuff, but people ask us anyway, and that's what led us to develop this new workshop. It's called the Glamping Investment Connection, and we basically are inviting people who have money, banks or people who want to loan money, or equity investors or venture capitalists who are interested in the outdoor hospitality sector, to come to this workshop. But as importantly, we're inviting people who run glamping businesses, again, whether it's the accommodation side of the business or the manufacturing or products or services, who may need capital. And that's putting them in the same room together for 3 hours and giving them an opportunity to network and let people see how the process works. So that if you've never had to make a pitch to a potential investor, why you should loan me money or why you should invest in my company, you get a chance to see 6 of those from 6 different organizations, to a panel of investors who are not going to compete like on Shark Tank to say, here's my money, but are going to say, hey, here's what I loved about your pitch. Or if you were doing that to me, I would want you to talk more about this. Or you should get more detail on this part of your presentation. So these 6 companies can kind of fine tune their pitches and do it for real. And then during the networking part, you got a room full of people who either have money or are looking for money, who can meet each other over coffee or lunch, get acquainted, and save a ton of time trying to kind of stumble around and figure out where to go. So that's the exact reason we're launching the workshop, to try and satisfy the need of, how does it work? Where do I go? Who do I ask? What does it cost? Is it easy? Is it hard? Those are the questions we're going to try and answer during that workshop on Monday morning.
I know there's a sense in the campground industry that there's a bunch of, there's a ton of investment activity. There's a ton of, it just seems like there's a ton of money coming into the industry. Is there that sense, from your perspective? I guess, obviously you're not an association, but just from your perspective, is there the sense that, there is this influx of money that wants to get involved in glamping as well?
Well, capital is always looking for a home.
Yeah.
I mean, the job of a venture capitalist or an equity investor is to take somebody else's money and invest it very effectively for a superior return on investment. The job of a bank is to lend money and charge interest and make money. So yeah, there is a lot of capital out there looking for places to go. And because there have been some early success stories from the investment side within our sector, then everybody's saying, well, maybe is there something there for me? So I don't mean to say there's a stampede. There are a million different sectors of business in the world that are looking for investment capital. But I think some financial services organizations are recognizing outdoor tourism, and glamping in particular, as a prospect, and are spending time. We had several companies that came to the event last year, not to exhibit, but just to attend the conference so they could listen and hear who was saying what and what the opportunities were, and begin to do their own due diligence on opportunities within the sector. So yeah, I don't know how much there is, but I think it's out there.
No, David, we need a number. We need a number right now. How much money is out there, David?
There's $11.
Ben, break out your checkbook. Yeah. But do you worry, David, that the cost of fuel and just the cost of getting around with the cost of vehicles, even cars, is that going to slow things down even in the glamping sector? I know you can just drive up and you're there and everything's there. Makes it great for the electric car business, I think, when you can do that. but it adds again another level of infrastructure that these providers have to think about.
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. If I had the answer, I could be consultant instead of operating a trade show and a digital magazine.
Oh, consultants never have answers. You just
they just ask more questions. The answer is, I don't think it's going to have a giant effect. I mean, again, thinking about it, so gasoline, I think it's as expensive where I live as any place in Southern California. We're very excited because average price of $1 a gallon of regular gasoline came under $6. So it's a bargain now. But if it was $3 before, and you're going to pay $3 a gallon more, how many gallons of gas are you going to use to drive from here to Yosemite and back? And compared to buying an airplane ticket or taking the train or whatever else. So I think people have to calculate the cost into their budget when they're making these decisions. I think it might have a little less effect on sort of an individual vacation. I'm going to go someplace for a week. Then I own an RV and I was planning on doing, a 6-month tour around the country. I think, but even then, it's just a budget consideration. How does that affect our ability to be gone for 6 months? Does it turn into 5 months? So I don't know if it'll have a giant effect. I'm just not that smart about it. I'm hoping not, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's interesting as we move into summer, and just seeing travel patterns. I know just for the park and RV park owners that that I talk with regularly, not a lot of them have seen very much, but there have been a few cancellations here and there, or people shortening trips, or maybe they're only going on one trip this year instead of 2 or 3, or it's all going to be super local and they're not going to be going to the Grand Canyon. So that should be pretty interesting to see how that works out. And of course, inflation along with the gas prices is another concern. So.
Everything is going to factor into everything. But I don't know whether gas prices by themselves, but inflation is becoming an issue. Supply chain things are still an issue. Gasoline price is an issue. Just put it all into a blender and see what comes out, and whether it's something that people want to do, can afford to do, or if they find a way to do it. I think yes, but I don't want to. I'm the last person to be. I'm not expert at anything. It's just my guess.
So, David, I was talking with a friend last month and who's getting ready for their big summer vacation, making their plans, and they were very excited because they said they were going to glamping. And I said, well, gee, where are you going? How are you going to do that? And they had rented through a peer-to-peer service, Outdoorsy, they had rented an RV for 2 weeks, and that they considered that glamping. Is that glamping if you're renting an RV?
It isn't to me, Mike. And that's we're back to what's the definition. I don't think so. I mean, from their point of view, that's glamorous camping. They're going to have this, really cool infrastructure. Again, it's kind of like a tortoise carrying its home around with them, and that's God. I love the creature comforts. Some of our friends have magnificent motorhomes and nicer than my house. What a great way to travel and get around.
Yeah.
But from our point of view, I don't think we would define that as glamping. That would be really high-end RVing. But what do I know?
What about the not in my backyard feature that comes up at public hearings a lot when somebody decides they're going? I know it happens in the campground business for a long time. When somebody's trying to decide to put a new campground someplace and the neighbors just go in an uproar. Are we seeing that on the glamping side too, or is it such a different thing that the public in general is more forgiving?
Well, I read this magazine called Woodall's every day, and I get these emails. And from looking at the articles in those emails, it's an issue everywhere. Yeah. So I think, city councils or boards and things like that nobody wants their neighborhood to change. And whether it's a McDonald's or a glamping site or an RV site, I think there are always going to be obstacles to overcome. I don't know if it's much, Ben, you know better than I do, is it much the construction part of it, or people don't want the traffic, they don't want more people in their neighborhood? I'm not sure what all the issues are about, but
Yeah, it depends. So, like on the glamping side, I think we see owners, they will buy some of these luxury tents or whatever, homeowners, and just stick a couple of them up, especially if they're in a pretty scenic area, and just rent them out on like hip camp sites like that. I think a lot of the complaints for the neighbors is traffic related and noise complaints. Because obviously, when you add more people to an area, it's going to create more noise, and it also depends on the type of people you're attracting, as to how much noise and what they're doing, and if they're partying, then it can create a lot more noise. So I think it's an issue for everyone, and slowly we've started seeing more local officials taking action. Usually it's complaint based, so somebody will complain and then they'll take action. Um, but I have to imagine we'll start seeing that more and more, um, as time goes on, because I think a lot more people are doing it. So
Yeah, that's a better answer than I could have given.
yeah,
So looking through the magazine, David, and the vendors at your show, what's the next big thing in glamping? I mean, you just see everything from, it used to be just cabin tents, bell tents. Now it's tree houses. Now it's these off the hook experiences again. What's next? How far can this go?
Well, I think we're only limited by people's imagination and what they can figure out they can create and replicate cost effectively. I mean, certainly design is part of it. People want things that are unique and extraordinary. I've never seen that before. You're going to marry that to how many different people want to carry the same thing. And is it so unique that it isn't affordable or it isn't easy to maintain? And so you have all the other issues as well.
Yeah.
But that's the fun part for us. We know who's coming to the event as our exhibitors. We don't often know what they're bringing. So when company X shows up, and last year they were there with this, an example in 2019, one of our exhibitors is Cavco out of Arizona.
Yep.
And they brought this really cool park model, please, I hope this is not bad terminology, sort of a tiny home kind of thing that was so cool inside and decorated, and I could see where you could just drop that someplace and it would be a really good place to work out of and to live while you're in this environment, wherever that is. And then I thought they were going to bring just another one like that in 2021, and they showed up with something completely different. At first glance, it looked like another one, but if you look more closely, only 20% of it was manufactured. There was a kitchen and bathroom that were manufactured at the factory, and the rest of the platform was left open. It looked like an aircraft carrier when they drove it up. It just had nothing on it, but they did a joint venture with one of our safari tent manufacturers out of South Africa, Bush Tech Safari, who custom fitted a 400 square foot standard, best practice safari tent, which was installed onto this floor. And so when you looked at it, it looked like a tent, except that it was on a platform on wheels. So it was a trailer being pulled around. When you walked in this amazing tent structure. But when you got to the back of the tent, instead of a back tent wall, there was a fully installed kitchen with oven, microwave, and sink, and all that kind of stuff. And you walk through the door into a glorious bathroom. So it kind of took the two things and married them, just through somebody who was creative enough to put one and one together and make three out of it. So I don't know. We've seen more domes recently. We're seeing more different kinds of yurts and teepees, but there's something different about them. Hard structures, soft-sided structures with wood on one side and fabric on another side. I mean, they're just really beautiful and creative and innovative. So that's the best part for us, is being there on Sunday and Monday when the exhibitors are setting up before the show opens. We get a chance to, what the heck is that? Oh my God, that's really cool. So I think they're going to keep creating as long as people want something new.
And
go ahead, Ben.
And I just commented on there's the link to the unit that you're talking about. We did a slideshow for it. For people who want to take a look at the unit you were just talking about, it was pretty innovative, and it was kind of neat to see some of the other units that were at the show this last year. I mean, just some real neat, innovative looks that would be neat to stay in. So
David, there's a lot of data out there now. Gosh, every month that Ben knows this, he deals with it too. We get a press release that says new study has come out, and they're talking to thousands of campers. They're talking to thousands of glampers. Is research the next new frontier for glamping too? Because I know the KOA did a specific one a few years ago, but there hasn't been a lot of glamping specific things to define who the customer is and what the potential is.
Yeah, it's. I think, Mike, there seem to be a lot of companies out there offering research that we've kind of ignored. They look like they're coming from sort of research mills, if you will. People just pushing stats together and stuff. From a KOA point of view, we're kind of excited because KOA/Terramore is doing our opening presentation with new research. That's our opening session at the conference on Tuesday, October 4th. So we're very excited about that. So that'll be new. With some people, if you know some of the exhaustive statistics that are done for the hotel industry, room nights and reservations and traffic and dynamic pricing and yield demand, I see some of those kinds of applying those kinds of things to the glamping space at some point in time, so that operators can be a little smarter about what people are willing to pay and patterns and trends from around the country, from sector to geography to geography. So I think there's some opportunity there. I think when organizations like the American Glamping Association, they've grown like a weed also over the last couple of years. And as they continue to grow, I'm sure that'll be part of their mandate, is to conduct organic research to better understand where it is and where things are going and the trends. And that's what associations do as part of their mandate. We'll look for things as we can with the magazine that are within our reach. But this is kind of a cottage industry project, so we can't go out and commission $500,000 to conduct research. It's just not going to happen. So I think you'll see more as as it grows, but I think it'll happen organically.
So in the KOA report that was just released last week, they mentioned among new campers, a quarter of them, might not come back camping, or, they either had an experience that they didn't like or something or whatever. And I mean, that has to impact glamping to some level, I guess. Maybe some of them were glampers, or they tried a glamping experience. I guess just kind of, what are your thoughts on retaining all these people that are coming into the market, even on, the glamping side?
If you think about any other business, how many businesses do you know that retain 100% of the clients?
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. So I think if 75% of the people who try glamping for the first time say, hey, I loved glamping, we're going to be doing just fine. Whether somebody didn't like that particular purveyor, or they had there was a bug in their room, or something didn't work, they didn't like the experience of being remote. It sounded good when you talked about it, but I didn't like it, when it really happened. But it's not any different from people trying sports for the first time, or hobbies for the first time, or going. For everybody I talk to who goes to Hawaii for the first time, where Mike lives, it's not 75%. I get 95% love it, and the other 5% think it sucks. It's just like, oh, why would you go to Hawaii? God, it was like a 6-hour flight, and I had to wait in line. So nothing is 100%. If we get 75%, we're going to be doing great.
I need that Pacific Ocean just to keep Ben and his kids out of here.
If you stay down there, Mike, I'll come down. You let everybody come down to visit you. So
I know. Always a house full here.
We'll go see the volcano. I know you like to go see it.
Well, I'm thinking about putting up a couple of tents out in the backyard here, so I can start my own glamping operation.
Find some cool things you can buy.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because Hawaii, for instance, there are no commercial campgrounds, there are no RVs, there's nobody pulling a trailer around here.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, as I wrote in the last month's edition of Glamping Business Americas, there's glamping businesses here. They've exploded of all sorts, shapes, and sizes all over the place. So there's a market now for getting outdoors, even in Hawaii, that wasn't here before.
Yeah. 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 It's just been amazing how the glamping has just taken off and how it's really allowed different areas that maybe didn't even have parks like Hawaii. It's allowed, it's just spread to these, kind of exotic locations and different locations that you just can't build a traditional park in, or that RVs aren't going to make it into. When we went out to the Grand Canyon, there were different areas we saw where there were some glamping locations and just really spectacular areas. Um, and David, your magazine does an awesome job with the pictures. So
Oh, thanks.
it's very nice publication with the pictures, and it makes people want to travel. So
Well, then we're doing our job. But it's not so much about the travel for us. It's
yeah,
about giving the business tips, business education, advice, case studies, so that someone who's operating a glamping business has someplace they can go and just see how other folks are doing it. Hey, I tried this and it worked great, or I tried this and it did not work so great. I wouldn't do that again. Having people like Mike contribute to it, and Mike Howard, Honey Trek, talking about their experiences as guests as they go around the world and the different kinds of glamping experiences. All those are designed to give folks some information to make it either easier or better, or give them a wider range of experiences they can't get just on their own. So we're glad
That's an interesting point too, Dad. I know you've got ties to glamping companies and operations in Europe, and it's been going there for a little bit longer. And what people don't realize is you could pretty much glamp anywhere you'd like in the world now. It's not just America.
It's true. I mean, go to any of the glamping destination sites, like the Glamping Hub or any of them, and you don't just plug in, I want to go to California. It's, I want to go to Nepal. It is a global thing. Asia is going crazy. Japan, Malaysia, Cambodia, just the whole Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. I mean, you can glamp anywhere. You could do nothing but glamp the rest of your life if you win the Powerball and have all that money, and you could just go from glamping site to glamping site and from country to country almost without interruption. It's really quite extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
So David has working with all these glamping locations and seeing all of these awesome areas they're in. Has it just sparked an interest in you to start a glamping park? Are you going to put up tents somewhere and rent them out to people?
There's an old expression I heard one time when somebody wanted to say no definitively, and the answer was, not if it would ensure world peace. Sally and I love the idea of glamping, but the idea of being a host and having to put up with people like me as a guest, that would be terrible. So I think it takes a certain kind of person, and I am not him. So I would rather be a consumer, if that's okay with you, than a purveyor.
I've had the same question asked to me on the campground side, that everybody expected me to buy or manage a campground, and I said I don't have what that takes. It really is a unique thing to be able to be that. It's a different sort of hospitality provider that can operate a glamping facility or a campground. So I've got all sorts of respect for those folks that can pull that off successfully, because it is a lot of work. This isn't a free business, and it's not free money. This is a business that takes a lot of investment and time and energy.
Yeah, I was just reading about a development last week. This couple, I think we had the story up on Woodall's. This couple had bought a small campground as a retirement. They were going to do it in retirement and just enjoy the lifestyle. So I kind of chuckled a little when I was reading it. So we'll see how that goes for them. But,
I hope it goes great, but good luck with that.
But anyways, well, I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks, David, for coming on. And again, he operates the Glamping Show USA, which is a great event. If you've never been and you're interested in the glamping side of the business, or even if you run a traditional campground, there's always neat stuff to look at and new stuff to learn. It's always a great show out in Denver, Colorado, and it's at the beginning of October again, right?
Yeah, it's October. The expo is October 4 and 5. The pre-conference workshop starts on October 3rd. You can get all the details on the show and the magazine, this is the pitch part, by going to glampingshow.us. And everything is there. And subscriptions to the magazine are free. You can read past issues and see Mike's great articles. And the more the merrier. Come on down.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, if the weather was anything like last year again, this year, I mean, the weather was awesome. So for the time of year. So, but anyways, well, thanks everyone for watching, and everyone have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, David. It's great seeing you again.
You too.